I want to talk about the Raiders today because I really, really love the approach they've taken this offseason. It all goes back to January. It started with hiring their general manager, John Spytek. Ever since that moment, they've been on a path I've really enjoyed. So John Spytek is a guy, came over from Tampa, has a connection to Tom Brady. He actually played, they had 1 year of crossover at Michigan, so they played together in college, technically. John Spytek was a freshman when Tom Brady was a senior, so they've been connected for a long time. But here's what John Spytek did. Number one, he hired Pete Carroll as a new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I love the move. Is Pete Carroll the best head coach in football? No, not at all. But Pete Carroll has been coaching for over 40 years. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, won one of them. He won 2 national titles in college football. He's the best possible option they could have got right now at this moment of the organization for the Las Vegas Raiders. They weren't going to attract top head coaching candidates, a Ben Johnson type or someone who's a young upcoming coach. They just don't have the resources right now to attract someone like that. And all the other big names were gone. Pete Carroll's kind of the best it possibly gets, and I think he's actually perfect for the job for this specific moment of the Raiders organization. He's 73 years old. I think everyone can look at that age and realize, hey, Pete Carroll's not going to be the head coach of the Raiders for the next 10 years. But what he can do is set the tone for right now and create a new culture in Vegas, which I think is kind of perfect for that. Now, my big criticism of Pete Carroll during his time in Seattle was the offensive side of the football. He's a defensive head coach, and I don't think he ever really had a great offensive coordinator in Seattle, not once. Well, here's what they did. Guess what? The second move they made this offseason in Vegas was they hired Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. They got him to leave Ohio State. They gave him $6 million a year. He's the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL. I think it's awesome. Is Pete Carroll, again, Pete Carroll's perfect for setting the tone, getting things right. He's not going to be the guy to develop their new quarterback. He's not going to be the guy to set the tone on offense. That's Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, say what you want. Was he a great head coach in the NFL? No. Was he a great head coach at UCLA? No. Is he a really dynamic play caller and offensive coordinator? Yes, absolutely. Him paired with Pete Carroll, that's a pairing I trust. I really like it. And then the Raiders made a really big move, something that surprised a lot of people, I think, honestly. They decided to keep their star defensive end, Max Crosby. New GM, new head coach. They could have traded Max Crosby away for a giant haul, got a couple first-round picks maybe use it to reset their franchise. But no, they said, hey, instead of doing that, we're not going to restart and rebuild. We're going to give Max Crosby a $106 million contract extension, and we're going to try to win right now. And the most recent move that really confirms this, the Raiders have traded for quarterback Gino Smith from Seattle. The Raiders had to give up a third-round pick. It wasn't their own. It was one they got in the Devontae Adams trade with the Jets. So they gave up a third-round pick. They got a new starting quarterback. The Raiders did. Gino's 34 years old. He's likely going to want a new contract. That's part of why Seattle didn't want to keep him. They're like, hey, we love you. You're older. We don't want to give you the money you want. The Raiders are in a position where they just need a competent quarterback. It's been years where they just haven't had great quarterback play. It's been frustrating. They want to win. They want to not suck. Gino Smith stabilizes the Raiders organization immediately. He's not a top 5 quarterback, nothing like that. But Gino Smith is a big upgrade in the quarterback room for the Raiders. And he is reuniting with his former head coach, Pete Carroll from Seattle. I love it. All these moves, Pete Carroll, John Spytek, Chip Kelly, Max Crosby being kept, given a big contract extension, not traded away. Gino Smith getting traded for, getting a new contract, we assume. I love this because it's the Raiders trying to win right now. The Raiders are not throwing in the towel saying, hey, we're just going to suck for a couple of years. I'm sorry, fans. I'm sorry, all you people who love our team are invested and care, but it's just going to be a miserable couple of years. They're not doing that. And I love that for a couple of reasons. A, I know a couple of Raiders fans. It's been a rough couple of years. They've already been bad for years. That's a fan base that's hungry, that wants to win, that wants to put their best foot forward. But on top of that, think about this. If you're John Spytek, the general manager, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL. Like, you have to show results quickly. He realizes that. He's making aggressive moves to try to be competitive immediately. We're not going to rebuild and suck for a couple of years. We're going to compete. And they play in the AFC West, which has Kansas City, which Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. You've got Denver with Bo Nix and Sean Payton coaching quarterback. You've got LA with the Chargers. They've got Justin Herbert at quarterback, Jim Harbaugh as head coach. That's a loaded division, the AFC West. I don't imagine the Raiders are going to win their division anytime soon. But they're going to try. They're competing. And they're going to fight. They're going to battle. Pete Carroll's going to set a new tone in Vegas. And they're going to try to make the Raiders organization a place people want to work. People want to be there. People will move across the country to come work for you or sign in free agency. To me, this offseason is a massive, massive win for Raiders fans. A fan base that has watched their team flounder and struggle. And I don't have stomach for a huge rebuild. If I was a fan of a team, I'd be like, hey, so we're going to tank and suck for like 4 years. And maybe if we do things right, it's going to work out and we're going to win eventually. Maybe. Like, because the Jets have been trying that for years and it's not gone well for them. So as an outside observer of the Raiders organization, I appreciate they're trying to win now. They're going to compete. They're going to put their best foot forward. And I think that's the right way to do it. Trying to win now in Vegas. I love winning. No one wants to wait. And actually, ironically, winning makes me think of today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks because Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks offers quick and easy deposits. You can even use Venmo, Apple Pay, and MasterCard to put money in your account more easily this sports season. Download the app today and use code CLNS for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. Let's stay with the Raiders, actually, ironically. Now, to me, in my opinion, the most interesting quarterback in this year's draft is former Alabama quarterback Jaylen Milroe. I did not say he's the best. I think the best quarterback in this draft class is Cam Ward, followed closely behind by Shedeur Sanders. But to me, Jaylen Milroe is the most interesting, most fascinating, because it's really boom or bust. He was not great in college, had some good moments, had some moments where he made throws that I went, yo, that's a bomb. That's an incredible throw into a tight window, like way downfield. Oh my goodness. Or the times he would scramble and run around and at times look like the best player on the field running the football. You're like, yo, this kid, he's different. He's got something other athletes and other quarterbacks simply do not have. A huge arm, and he's a great athlete. He can run around and extend plays. There's something there. There's potential that I would love to mold as a coach into something great. But Jaylen Milroe was not yet ready to be an NFL starter. I would love to see him drafted and sit behind an established veteran quarterback in the NFL so he can learn and develop and get better. And 2 teams come to mind, actually. However, when you look around the NFL at teams, it used to be back in the Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, Manning, there were a lot of teams, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, there were a lot of teams where like, yo, this guy's getting older and you might want to draft a quarterback behind him to try to develop that guy. Today's NFL is not like that. Most quarterbacks are young on their first or second contract, and you're like the best quarterbacks in football right now are not on the verge of getting replaced. And the Matt Ryan generation already has retired and moved on. There's not many veteran quarterbacks that are kind of on the doorstep of retiring and moving out. 2 teams come to mind, though, that have a quarterback that is not probably your forever guy and is definitely your starter now, who could give you a chance to bring in Jaylen Milroe and learn behind them. Number 1, actually, we'll talk about the Raiders in a minute, but the Rams are actually a really cool fit for Jaylen Milroe. He could sit behind Matthew Stafford. He could play for Sean McVay. I think Jaylen Milroe would learn a lot about football and a lot about playing quarterback as the backup in Los Angeles. And there's potential where when Stafford retires, maybe there could be a smooth transition over to Jaylen Milroe. I like that idea. That's fun. That's exciting. Here's an even better fit, though. I think the Raiders are a really, really interesting opportunity for Jaylen Milroe. They're rebuilding their franchise, but they're trying to win now. They got Pete Carroll. They got Chip Kelly. Crosby long extension. They've got Gino Smith they just brought in to be their starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. But Gino Smith is 34 years old. Part of why Seattle parted ways with him is they didn't want to give him the money he wanted. The Raiders are more desperate. They're willing to pay that money. Sure. But if you can grab Jaylen Milroe in the second or third round, I think the second round's kind of the sweet spot there. The Raiders do still have a third round pick. They traded away one. They've got their own left. They traded away the draft pick from the trade for Devontae Adams. To me, Jaylen Milroe has really, really interesting upside. His ability to run. He's got a huge arm. He's not going to struggle to I love Kellen Moore, for example. Kellen Moore, former Broncos, Boise State Broncos quarterback. Kellen Moore didn't have NFL arm strength. And you look around at the combine this year, a lot like Will Howard, I don't think is going to develop into a great quarterback. At best, Will Howard is a backup. Kyle McCord is a quarterback who I thought did a really good job this year, elevated his NFL standing. He's never really going to have potential to become a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Jaylen Milroe is somewhere around like a Jalen Hurts level quarterback. Huge arm, great athlete, can do some special stuff. There's potential there. That's a guy, Jaylen Milroe, who could become an NFL franchise quarterback with time, with the right coaching. I think Jaylen Milroe playing for Chip Kelly, a head coach and a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, all at certain times. Chip Kelly's a coach who has developed some of the most athletic quarterbacks we've ever seen. What he did at Oregon was incredible. At UCLA, developing quarterbacks. At Ohio State, even in Philly, remember, he had Nick Foles looking really, really good. I think him with Jaylen Milroe's skill set could be a really interesting pair in Las Vegas. Even though I like Gino, I think Gino Smith helps the Raiders win now. I think ultimately they could do better. There's better out there, but this is the best it gets for now. Why not try to develop a kid like Jaylen Milroe, who's really talented, and see what he can become down the road? That idea really excites me. So Jaylen Milroe to the Raiders is a really interesting, really good fit. There are 3 other teams I think could fit in the mold for Jaylen Milroe, a team with a veteran quarterback who may or may not need to be replaced that provides an opportunity for him to learn. Number 1, Cleveland needs a quarterback badly. If the Browns do not draft a quarterback in the first round, which I think they're on the table to draft Shitter Sanders, honestly. But if they don't draft one in the first round, maybe they take Jaylen Milroe in the second round, let him sit, let him develop, maybe become their starting quarterback. I think New Orleans could draft him to sit and learn behind Derek Carr. And then Dallas is a dark horse. The Dallas Cowboys have a really, really expensive, bad contract with their quarterback, Dak Prescott. You bring in Jaylen Milroe, let him sit, let him learn and develop. Maybe someday he could succeed and ultimately replace Dak Prescott. So again, Jaylen Milroe, really exciting, love it. The Raiders in general making aggressive moves. I'm a big fan of that. Let's end today with a question from Patreon. Troy writes in, says, hello to Zach's eyeballs. As a Raiders fan, how optimistic should I be about Pete Carroll? Going into the coaching cycle, I was more interested in the likes of offensive coordinators who were head coaching candidates like Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, Joe Brady, and Todd Monken, who was over the moon about the Ben Johnson rumors. Well, I see the upside, he was over the moon about the Ben Johnson rumors. I see what he's saying there. Well, I see the upside of Pete being a proven winner. I just see him as a bridge head coach when I feel like the one upside of the schematic minds were guys who are in the run for gigs. Guys who I think he was trying to say here is that the one upside of the schematic minds who were in the run for head coaching gigs have more upside. I think what we were trying to say is finding an offensive head coach could be your guy long term, and that makes more sense. Troy finishes saying, maybe it's just me placing a lot of stock in an elite offensive play caller, but what say you? No, I think you're right. I mean, the criticism of Pete Carroll is that he's not an offensive head coach. He's not the guy developing the quarterback. And ultimately, if you get a great offensive coordinator, he's going to go leave somewhere else to be head coach. That's not quite the situation, though, with the Raiders. The Raiders have brought in Pete Carroll to set the tone to win now. Pete Carroll is not going to be the head coach forever. I think there's an understanding, almost even like could this transition to Chip Kelly's team eventually? You sit, you learn. When it comes time for Pete Carroll to walk away, does Chip Kelly become the head coach? That's not off the table here. But a big reason why I'm okay with Pete Carroll now is they've got Chip Kelly calling the offensive plays. He's the guy running the offensive side of the football. It's also possible maybe Chip Kelly doesn't want to be head coach ever again. That's happened before. Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator in Philly, got his shot to be a head coach and hated it and wasn't great at it. And I think never wants to do that job again. Chip Kelly voluntarily left the head coaching spot at UCLA to become the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Maybe he never wants to be a head coach again. But either way, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly working together, that's a fit I feel great about. I don't think Pete Carroll's head coach forever, but also look around the NFL. Who else was going to come take the Raiders job? All the great, Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, the guys who are young offensive coordinators becoming head coaches, they took jobs at teams that already had a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams. Like, they don't want to go somewhere that doesn't have a quarterback available for you. Jim Harbaugh got the best job. He got to work with Justin Herbert. The Raiders weren't really in the running for these great young offensive head coaches. Pete Carroll's kind of the best it gets. That was the best name available they were going to possibly attract to be their head coach. So how optimistic should you be? Are they going to win their division? No. Are they going to suck and be horrible? I don't think so. I think they're going to compete and work hard and do their best. And maybe they take the knees out of a team like Denver or the Chargers, but they're going to try to make noise. And if I'm a Raiders fan today, the biggest thing I would have been afraid of is my team tanking and trying to suck. And someday in 5 years, maybe, just maybe, if we draft properly, we'll be good. Well, that's not the case for the Raiders organization. They're already a solid team. Solid head coach, awesome offensive coordinator, Max Crosby, Gino Smith. They're trying. They're taking big swings and making aggressive moves to win now. I love that. I love that so very much. And if I'm a Raiders fan, I would feel optimistic.